our discussion this evening is going to focus on the article that Wayne wrote that's been published in Family Medicine. And it's a new model of care to return holism to family medicine. And I thought, Wayne, we should probably start with you providing an introduction to that. I'm presuming others have read it, I hope. I've read it a couple times, and I have some questions for you, but I thought, why don't you go ahead and give sort of an overview of what you're trying to say in the article?
Okay, thank you, Larry. I'll do that. Just take, maybe about 15 minutes and do that. This whole article was inspired by this group. Okay, and the discussions that I've been having both collectively and individually by people here. And so what I was trying to do is just get my own head around it. And I'm going to share a couple things. What I thought I'd do, rather than just iterate the article, which you can all read, it's a pretty short article, I wanted to kind of do something a little different, if you wouldn't, that really surrounds it, if you don't mind. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, let me see if I can. So I want to talk about what I call advanced primary care. I know it's a term that is used by a lot of people, and for different reasons, but I want to talk about what I consider sort of the four M's that need to go into creating this. And as we have discussed a lot of this, over the last year or two in this leadership group, you'll recognize many of the concepts in here that I've really learned from you. I'd like to start with a mindset, because I think that is the most important thing. It's really having a perspective and an understanding of what do we mean by healing and what's the role of primary care in that. I'll then talk to you about a bunch of models. A few models. There are a bunch of models out there, and they all have to do with which lens you're looking through. Okay. Are you looking through a design lens, an implementation lens, a payment lens, blah, 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 blah. Then you draw your own models in those areas. But if you don't have the mindset, then you don't know where they're going. They get very confusing. I'll talk a little bit about some methods, because I think actually there are some, I think there's some methods that can be simplified that can really teach people how to do this, even if they're not doing it right now. And then I want to talk a little bit about the money, because everybody says, what about the money? How should it flow? So this is the fundamental question I think we should all be asking. It doesn't matter which lens you're looking through. The question is, how do we get from delivering health care to creating health and well-being? All of the discussions practically in healthcare reform and all payment issues and all that stuff are talking about, well, how do we improve healthcare? And that's not the question, okay? The question is, how do we improve health? And that's a very different question, okay? And I'll show you why in just a little bit. So I started in this article with what I consider the core issues. The first one is that holism is central to the care of the person. And I used George Engel's biopsychosocial model, now, I don't know how many, 35, 40 years old now, from his article was published in Science called the biopsychosocial model. But it fundamentally says that a person is made up of mind, body, social, and spirit. And if you want to take care of the whole person, this is what you take care of. This is what you pay attention to. The second point is that reductionism, which is the way we go about science and healthcare, picks holism apart. And it's no wonder that family physicians or others that are trying to take care of the whole person are struggling. And here's different ways in which it picks it apart. Evidence-based medicine is a way of picking it apart, okay? It's a way of saying, well, I'm going to take this part of you, I'm going to study it in a randomized control trial, and I'm going to see if it has that outcome on this part of you. And if you just go use evidence-based medicine, and we hear it all the time, you've got to be evidence-based, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you are going to lose holism. You have to use a more of a systems science approach rather than a RCT reductionistic approach. The very diagnosis, the very idea of getting a diagnosis and using the SOAP note to get an assessment, which is the diagnosis, and the plan picks holism apart. Okay, it labels somebody as something instead of the whole thing, and it distracts us from paying attention to these areas. Our whole approval process is structured around this. The FDA approves products that can be shown to be greater than placebo. Okay, and yet it is the ritual that goes into placebo that produces a huge effect. But this doesn't count for the FDA. Okay, only if you can show that your chemical works better than that. Guidelines are designed from that. Okay, show me the RCTs and the meta-analyses that will fit into that diagnostic SOAP approach. And then the payment follows from that. Okay, if all the above approves, then we're going to pay for it. We're going to cover it. And so I have to find something that attaches the P to the A, or I'm not going to get it covered in those areas. And this is what fee for service is, right? I'm going to serve your A with my P. And that's the fee for service is all bent around that. Well, in chronic illness, this is not working. I repeat it, it's not working by any parameter, okay? The things we want to see happen, health and an improved experience of care, are declining. And there's lots of data to show this, okay? Compared to many countries in the world, the satisfaction is declining and the actual health of our population is declining. The things that we don't want to see increase are increasing. Costs are going through the roof. And this little graph on the side shows you the United States, which is the far outlier in the circle, per capita costs compared to other countries in the world, and life expectancy. And we pay double any other country. And our life expectancy is somewhere around Portugal or Czechoslovakia in those areas. Because the costs are increasing, disparities are increasing. And COVID has just thrown gasoline on this issue. That the difference between the haves and the have-nots has gotten wider. And as we all know, burnout, that is the experience of the providers, is increasing now. 50% of providers in these areas. So things are going the wrong way. Healthcare is not working for chronic disease management. We actually know why that is, because medical treatment under the current models does not address the underlying factors that actually contribute to health. And as you can see from this graph, the major ones are behavior and lifestyle factors and the social and economic components, these so-called determinants of health. The social and economic are called the social determinants of health. Behavior and lifestyle are the behavioral components, sometimes integrative or lifestyle medicine. You put those together, I call those the personal determinants of health. And these are 80% of what creates health, as opposed to what we do now, which only gives about 15 to 20%. So we need to get out of this box and begin to have a model that addresses these areas. All right, so let's start with the mindset. This is by far the most difficult thing to change, but the most important thing to change. In acute care, if you break your leg, if you need a tumor removed, if you are having a heart attack, if you need your life saved, and it's possible to do that, you need to be thought of as a machine, okay? Somebody take over, intervene, stop the anatomy that's going to kill me, and the mechanical mindset works extremely well. And this is where reductionistic approach has shined. And of course, everybody in the world wants that because they don't want to die, right? So, and so now we have people not dying, but boy, they're not living either. And the problem is that works in acute care, but it does not work at all. In fact, it's counterproductive in chronic care thinking. And that's because we are an ecological system with very, very complex components that have at least the mind, body, spirit that we've talked to. This is the framework that I use. The body and the external component are an important part, the behavioral and lifestyle components, the social and emotional, and at our core is the spiritual and the mental. And so if we want to have a chronic care model, we need to be thinking about how to do this. We don't believe this in the West. Most of the rest of the world actually does believe this, but in the West, we don't believe this because of the Cartesian duality that has occurred. If you believe that a whole person is made up of mind, body, and spirit, then if you're going to take care of the whole person, you have to sense, and I use that word intentionally, not just seeing, but detecting, understanding, feeling the whole person, the other person. This is the healing presence, if you will, that's required. If the person is actually made up of a mind and a spirit in the central part of this model, then this has different characteristics than the body. Let's take these three people that are shown in this example of what a whole person might be and the dimensions of healing. So person 1 and 2, if you're just looking at the outer ring, the body, they're very close together, right? They're maybe touching each other, okay? But person 3 is far away. In the mind, we're not so far away. You can think of person 3, you can know person 3, you can love person 3 in those areas. And in fact, if you look at all the spiritual traditions, they say at the center and the core of a person, in the spiritual level, not only are they close, not only are these close together, but we are linked continuously and regardless of the distance. We are, in fact, there is one mind, there is one time, and in the spirit, we can, in fact, detect each other. We know each other. It is the connection and the link to others. And it is getting down to this spiritual component, which is sometimes what is most important to you in life, meaning and purpose, which is where the healing presence come from. And there's a lot of evidence, actually, to support this, okay? Rigorous, randomized controlled trials, to use an reductionistic approach, in which the healing presence actually produces tremendous output and outcomes in health, lowered costs. I just read a book called Compassionomics. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it to you all, which basically lays out the evidence for compassion, which connects people not only to each other, but to something greater than themselves, which is sometimes called the other. And so if in fact people are made up with this, then if we neglect any of these parts, we are not taking care of the whole person. So that's a mindset change that is required. So let's go to models. And there's a number of models. I'll just show you a few models. The one in the article, the JFP article, was one. It is one that's looking through a particular lens. Here's the integrative health lens. It says we need to combine conventional medicine with non-pharmacological or complementary medicine and self-care or behavior in the center. And this is integrative health. The current primary care study that the National Academy of Medicine is doing actually has a task embedded in it. Here's the quote: the role of interdisciplinary teams and the range of primary care providers and the range of primary care providers, including those with lifestyle and integrative medicine expertise. I'll be very curious when the report comes out in the next month or so as to how they handle this question, because this is really the integrative health model in those areas, and it's in that task. Here's what a model looks like if you're looking at it through the design lens. You're trying to redesign a system of delivery. This is from the VA. It's beautiful. I love it. It has three components. The pathway, which they call the empowerment of the patient, getting them engaged. Notice that the way you do that is you ask them a spiritual question. It's called in the VA, not spirituality, it's called your meaning, aspirations, and purpose, okay? Why are you here in the world, okay? You knew why you were here when you were in the DOD, when you were military, but now that you're a veteran, why are you here in the world, okay? That's the very first dialogue that you have in this model. The second one is to equip them with a variety of well-being programs that actually allow them to develop skills so that they can act on that empowerment. And then the third part is clinical care. This is treat them in a way that aligns their treatment with the healing components and the empowerment components. Now, the VA has actually been looking at this. They had 18 centers last year that they rolled out. They're rolling it out over the next 5 years to the entire VA. And I can tell you, having just looked at this as part of the cover commission, which was a commission looking at how to improve whole person care in the VA. The two first part are really going gangbusters. The empowerment part, the well-being part, mainly because physicians are not involved, okay? The treatment part, that treatment part is where they're getting the holdup. The physicians don't know actually, and their teams don't know exactly how to do this. Okay. And this part is not actually working very well, but this is a design lens in this area. Okay. So here's what I put into the JFP article, and this is really inspired by what many of you have brought to the discussion in this leadership group over the last year or more. And what I tried to do is say, well, if I'm a health systems operator and I want to get really truly advanced primary care, what are the components that have to be in that? And we start at the center, which is sort of standard care, diagnosis, treatment, and payment. That's what most of medicine does, and it's structured, and the SOAP note does. But then there is what's called quality primary care, and we know what this is too. This is a Starfield model. Okay, that's the second circle in those areas, and that's the 4 C's: the first, contact, comprehensive, coordinated, continuous care in those areas, and that's good quality care. If somebody's doing that, they're doing very good quality primary care, right? But the things have gotten so complicated and so difficult in the management of primary care now that we need more than that. And I think for the modern age, we need something that I'm calling enhanced primary care. And I write about several models of that. And the key issues there are better chronic care management and mental health care as an integral part of primary care in that area. And we see several examples of that. The South Central Foundation is one that's brought mental health care into the heart of primary care. The VA has primary care mental health teams. The coordination and the chronic care management, pharmacy management, referral appointment management. I think one of the best examples of this is Catalyst. Catalyst provides this kind of support in enhanced primary care. But my experience, and now have working with them for over a year, is that if the individual practices aren't already quality primary care, they're not, the 4 C's, the Starfield model, they can't take advantage of what Catalyst has to offer. And this is their big challenge, I think, is trying to get practices that are still using just standard care. How do we leapfrog quality primary care into enhanced primary care? It's very difficult to do. But that's not enough. And the reason it's not enough is because it does not necessarily address the 2 things that I showed you were in fact the underlying determinants of health and healing, which is the behavior and lifestyle components and the social determinants. And that's where advanced primary care, and that's the outer circle here. Integrative care, I've shown on the left here. This is where it fits. Integrative care is not everything, okay? It's by itself, it is not good primary care. I know a lot of integrative care practices that don't do any of these other things. They don't provide good comprehensive primary care, for example, or quality primary care. Naturopaths, for example, don't necessarily provide a comprehensive model in these areas. But lifestyle behavior, et cetera, and this is, of course, what has been discussed a number of these areas. Social determinants are on the other side of this component, and there's some examples of doing this. Now, what we've been looking for, and what I hope a National Academy study we've just launched that I'll show you in a minute will do, is it will look at, are there any groups that are actually doing all of these things, that are actually advanced primary care? And I'd love to get your thoughts. If you know any that really rise to the top here and meet all of these criteria and are doing all of this, I'd love to see it, okay, in those areas. But I think this is where we need to go if we're going to answer that first question, which is, how do we get from healthcare to the creation of health and healing? Language is really, really important. Here's another statement of task that's in the National Academy of Medicine primary care study. It says, expanding the scope of primary care to address the needs of individuals, families, and communities. That's a beautiful statement. We'll see how they deal with that, okay? But in my opinion, it means that we change the language. We no longer have patient-centered care. Out goes the patient-centered medical home, in my opinion. It's now person-centered care. And the meaning and purpose that I just showed you in the VA is not asking about, what's the best thing for you as a patient. It's what's the best for you as a person in those areas. It is relationship based. And this family medicine has talked about this for years. It's not transactional based, but in a fee for service related thing, it's about transaction. Very difficult to fit relationships into this. Iora is an example of one that has tried to put relationships in that as well as others. It's not about symptom management or even chronic disease management. It's about recovery and achieving healing, okay, and underlying healing. Last night I heard goal-oriented therapy talk, and thank you for sending that book around, Larry. It is a really different framework. It's talking about, what is the goals and how do I actually look at risks for doing that? It's about talking about what's the matter and what matters, and not just what's the matter, and putting those together. So here's another model. This is in the Cover Commission. We wrote this into the recommendation to the VA, and the VA is going to launch a study to try to look at how can they do this and build on what they're doing. This is but it looks at it. This is a model. It's from the operational lens. And I love this because it simplifies a lot of the above. It makes it actually easy to do. On the right-hand side, we have sort of standard evidence-based method. What's the matter? Do the SOAP note, provide lots of medical services, okay? On the left-hand side are the person-centered care items I've just been talking about. What matters to the person? We do that. The tool we've produced is called the Hope Note, and there are recovery services, healing services that support the healing of the individual on the left-hand side. Self-care, behavior, social, emotional, community coordination, basic needs. And the way that is integrated and delivered is through a personal health plan that puts both of those together. And there is an integrative team and a health partner. What is the health partner? A health partner is a combination of a health navigator, a health coach, and a community health worker. It's somebody that is the trusted person the patient deals with to make sure they can get the kind of healthcare that they need and that was just outlined before. It has to be value-based, and I use value-based because that was the term, but I'm going to recommend we need to change that term. It actually has to be globally paid for. You have to pay for the person to be able to do this, and not look at each of these individual services and say, well, which one shows evidence, and therefore we're going to have to do. That will never work, okay? CMS just approved acupuncture for people over 40 that have low back pain for 6 visits, okay, or something like that, 6 to 8 visits, okay? If you do that with every kind of healing modality that you have, including the social and emotional support, basic needs, community coordination, self-care components, forget about it, okay? We need to be able to cover it globally, measure outcomes, okay? The outcomes that we want, which are the quadruple aim, and then leave it to the healthcare systems to figure out how to do it, okay? Because they all have their own unique circumstances in those areas, okay? Now let's go to the money. This is my last thing, and then we can have a discussion, I hope. We just launched this National Academy of Medicine study. It's called Health Financing That Rewards Health. There's 4 other foundations involved in it. And here's the list of tasks. I won't read them all, but what we're trying to do is really define why the current service-based approach doesn't work, and point to some of the exemplars in these areas, evaluate how a global and capitated financing model, especially in the light of COVID that has, magnified these problems, and practical strategies and approach. What's the glide path to get from these exemplars to where do we need to go? And if anybody wants to help work on that, I would be happy to do that. Let's see, I guess somehow okay. So what might that look like? I have no idea. If anybody can help me with this area, if anybody can help them with this, to create a vision for a financing and money flow system in which the payers, the plans, the insurance companies, and the patients and providers can all say, yeah, we like this, okay? Boy, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? And we want to hold a series of convenings after this study comes out, probably in the late summer and early fall, to get it in front of key payers, national, state, and private payers in those areas. So if anybody wants to help with this, what might it look like? Well, certainly for catastrophic care, insurance is important. Safety net, got to be government payment. Periodic services, bundled or fee for service, there is a role for this. And primary and integrative care, we need global or value-based care in those areas. So anyway, that's the end of the comments I wanted to make. I know that's more than the article, but I thought this group, you know, can deal with that.
Oh, reactions, questions?
Please.
Wayne, thank you very much. Great presentation, great ideas, great concepts. My first thought is, when you speak about the creation of health, the creation of health, I'm wondering about framing that more as the restoration of health. I mean, the natural state of affairs is we should be born healthy unless there's some congenital issue. And then how we live and what goes on and the impacts upon our ecosystem of our health and well-being diminishes health. So, you know, the creation versus restoration versus maintenance of health, that kind of thing, you know, can you make a comment on that dimension?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great term. I like that, restoration of health. I think anything that shows that we're reversing the pathological path. Okay. I mean, I personally, I like the term healing, but it's so broad and it means so many things to people that we don't know. I think Joe Sugar talks about this. He talks about reversing disease, right?
Right.
And that's that is restoration of health from a disease state. And I love it. I think the languaging issue, if we can find a language that multiple stakeholders can say, yeah, I like that, we want to see that, I think that would be great. And I love restoration of health. The reason I have recovery model in the VA component is because that's what they like to use, okay, in those areas. But restoration would be great. Make a note.
So Wayne, you know, it's interesting to me because the on-site, near-site clinic model, you talk about Iora frequently, and they're very much Medicare kind of focused, and they've kind of moved back that way. Larry and I had a call with We Care TLC, and they are ready to move forward aggressively. And with Larry, the FMEC, Larry, you need a couple more letters behind your name there, by the way. And I'm talking to he, him, his. I'm not quite sure what to do about that either. But
hey, blame my daughters on that. They say, "What's your pronoun?" I got to stick it on there.
So anyway, that is so they're ready to move ahead aggressively and work on that, and they have no restrictions or limitations. It's literally a capitated model where they, you know, there's no restrictions on the amount of time they have to spend on people and so forth. So I really would like to try to take what you presented here tonight and get them into the learning collaborative that you've already got going, and anything else that you see, working with Larry and making him do all the really heavy lifting, of course.
That's why I need all the initials after my name so I can handle it.
Oh, good. So anyway, but I'd love to get that going with you and try to operationalize this model and refocus them, because they're right now is the time to do that.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'd love to do this. You know, it's my understanding that there is a emergence of a number of groups like We Care. I mean, ChenMed and a number of other networks that are growing and trying to really provide the kind of advanced primary care services that we're talking about here. And I don't know, has anybody actually pulled all those together to see what's available? I know it's a moving target, but it'd be interesting to just see, you know, who's out there trying to do this. And because I think if we inserted, you know, high quality primary care, whole person care into those and had a way to do it, then it would become routine and regular. Hey, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will tell you, it's really interesting. with ChenMed, they came to me and Jim Holder, my partner, and we were going to develop a model for them to take the commercial marketplace. And their president left and went to Paladina Health, which is now called, it's got a new name. It's really silly name. But anyway, so he left. And so they're kind of dead in the water right now. And they're going to have to go back and kind of restart some of this stuff. They definitely are committed to this. And Len, you work with them, do you not?
Yes.
And so,
Yeah, you're right. I brought up, I think Larry, on a call with you, we talked about Gaurav Dayal leaving ChenMed and what was, what did that mean and what would happen going forward. It's an interesting proposition that ChenMed is making to the world. And Scott, I know they've been active in Dallas and in the Metroplex, and their expansion plans are just insane to think about where they are to where they want to get to and how fast. But I guess, Wayne, I don't know how much you know of them, but man, they're the closest to some of the things you describe that I have seen, particularly around the template they use for globally capitated payment that they get from the payer, and then how they structure their whole compensation internally to their teams. The closest they get to kind of taking off the handcuffs of thinking about, we're going to rescue sick people, as opposed to a holistic approach to earn value in what you do every day, being more about the holistic approach of restoring health in an incredibly challenging community environment that most of their patients live in.
Now, I'd love to talk to groups like this, and especially if there's some readiness. As Larry knows, part of what we're trying to do in the Learning Collaborative that we're doing right now is that we're training some faculty, train the trainer folks, so that we have more people that can go out and work with groups like this and do that. So I think by this fall, we will have some some pretty well trained faculty that want to do this and are actually pretty good at it. So and I'd be happy to do it. I'd love to do that. I mean, we're trying to think now internally at our foundation, how can we scale this more? Ideas, inserting it into networks like this, I think is one of the sort of the best ways to do that.
So Wayne, just a couple of quick hitters, and then Mike Tuggy just arrived, and he's waiting for me downstairs. We're gonna, we've got to go get our proverbial act together because we're going to be at Jamaica tomorrow, so we have to go do some planning. So I'm going to have to sign off in just a minute, but here's some quick things. So FMEC and the PCIN and PCC are all working together. The Pacific Business Group on Health just put together a big initiative, and they went out. They're going to a bunch of employers, and they're saying you should be buying advanced primary care, and they've gotten some traction. They've gotten some people who've agreed to do that, and just very confidentially, this is like the boys club here where we don't talk about what I'm about to say.
Remember, this is being recorded.
Well, then I probably shouldn't say it. So anyway, we saw their metrics that they're measuring against, and it led to a very big, deep breath. It was Back to the Future. They went through a very exhaustive process with insurance companies and medical groups and employers to come up with what they thought were the right metrics. And I don't think that if those metrics were 100% complete, it would meet the model that we talked about. In fact, I think it would be the second circle from the middle, not the outside. So what we're going to do, being PCIN and PCC, is go to the people. We're going to the AARP and other large user groups and say, what are you really looking for? What do you want? And how would you know if it was available and be able to engage in it? And try to bring a different perspective from the public in. And watching what you went through tonight, I think we probably, the one way we might do that is describe what you've described here as whole person healthcare, and then go to say to them, so what are you looking for, right? And so we kind of prime the pump, and they kind of say, well, this is what we're looking for, and so we can go back and have the conversation about what would the metrics be, how would you look at that, and how could corporations demand that?
Yes.
That's where we are right now in the United States. Corporations have got to say, this is what I want, this is how I measure that. And I promise you, because this is my life, if we could deliver that, they would buy it. The problem is nobody's delivering it, and it's not available, right? I have companies that have hired me to go find advanced primary care for their people, and I'm walking around begging people to practice higher branded medicine because I can bring them populations of people. So the problem right now is we've got a supply side problem that's really
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Well, and who's the suppliers here? Who's the supplier?
Yeah, well, and that's
Why aren't they doing it?
Yeah, well, I don't think they have the vision, and I don't think the economics really supports them running toward that.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, Scott and others, I'd love to be able, and we can talk, offline around this. I'd love to be able to, after the National Academy Global Financing study comes out in the fall, we would like to put together a series of convenings with payers in a multidisciplinary environment, each of them, and to see, are they ready to begin to create, act on this? Okay, I mean, we don't want it to just sit on the shelf, and so, the three payers that I think you all could help me with, that we've been in discussions with a number of folks, but I'm still not sure exactly who is the best convener, which leadership would pull them together. Pacific Group on Health, I've heard 15 times probably in this area, and a conversation with Elizabeth Mitchell might be in order. But it's clearly states. I think states are, many of them are doing this already. They're ready to go. They want to go the next step. The private payers, as you've mentioned, who's the best convener for that will bring them together to talk about this, and then we may have a opportunity with the federal government too, with the current administration. So there's that we would like to try to find groups that have that capacity to convene those folks, to really look at this. So.
Hey, Wayne, you talked about training for staff. Who's doing that, and how could someone sign up to get trained to be a trainer?
Yeah, so I have 3 family physicians, all women, young women, that want to do this as a core part of their practice. So one of them has already started a business to try to do this in FQHCs. And a third one has worked with health plans in New York and has been doing it for a while, and now wants to, she wants to become, this is what she wants to do. And another one's just an old family doc, and we're tempting her. She's not old; she's a young family doc. Old soul.
Yeah. Does that look like they get together every week?
Yeah.
There's a curriculum and they talk about it. I mean, what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So, Larry can tell you about it because he's running it at FMEC. So we're running this learning collaborative at 17 primary care settings around the country. It's got a 9-month curriculum. And then it's got a 3-month, buffer to help people transition into. The goal is to implement whole person care and make it routine and regular someplace in their system. Okay. And so, we go through it's a learning collaborative. They're teaching each other how to do it because they're all different. They all have different resources and skills, and they're different, advances. Cleveland Clinic is part of it. Allen and Jamaica is part of it. And then we have 4 faculty, 3 core faculty that work with 4 of these practices. and then I work with 5. And then we have an evaluation person, Alan Shaughnessy, that probably many of you know in evaluation, who's there to support that. So it's basically over a year, but it's a 9-month thing to try to help implement this into their systems.
Okay. Well, it's great seeing everybody. Mike's just texted me again. I'm gonna have to run downstairs and get set up for Jamaica tomorrow. Michael, it's great to see your face. What's the third book gonna be?
The third book's actually going to be about medical colonialism.
All right. Well, I'm still so angry that you killed off the really cool guy in the first book.
There's actually just a book of short stories that just came out.
Right.
And then I've got 2 more novels cooking.
When the first novel, if you ever read the novel, there's this great guy and this woman, and it's this dynamic thing. And then about 80% of the way through, Michael kills the guy. And I'm like,
right?
I can't believe he did that. I'm so upset. My heart was broken. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can finish the book now. I'm so upset. So anyway, you're a tough author, Michael. That's all I have to say.
He wanted to get another gig.
Oh, is that what it was?
No,
All right.
it's the game. It's a Game of Thrones strategy.
Oh,
You-
yeah.
You keep killing off your
Yeah.
It was
main
tough.
people. Yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.
Take care, Scott. Say hello to Mike
Yeah,
for
Scott.
me.
We'll do it. Bye.
So
Wayne, I had
have
a question. Wayne, I
Yeah,
had a
go ahead,
question.
Pat. No, go,
I had a
Pat.
question for you about David Chase and the Rosetta, healthcare Rosetta. I mean, to read what their goal is and what they've been doing for 20 years, it sounds like they're sort of, right in your ballpark. Have you
Yeah.
had any meaningful discussions with them? I mean, they're pulling together funding, they're pulling together people to invest in new innovative approaches. They're looking at global financing. They're trying to solve the problem of the employers. I don't know that much about it, but it sounds like exactly the kind of partner we should be working with.
Now, Pat, I think that's exactly right. Thank you for mentioning them. I have looked at some of what they're doing. I haven't reached out to them or had any discussions with them yet, but I agree with you. I think that's another example of a group that's really trying to fill the supply side gap, right?
Right.
In these areas, and they're doing a lot of consulting also for payers to try to help them, learn how to.
And what they're doing is they're setting up kind of a nationwide network of consultants, investors,
Yeah.
all the different pieces, trying to get them all to come together and work with each other. I just think that could be a big piece of this whole movement.
Yeah, great suggestion. I think that's a
Well,
great suggestion.
let me just offer our next month when we meet in the first Wednesday of March, Jim Mold will be the feature with his book Goal Oriented Medical Care. The following month, that would be April, I'm trying to line up Dave Chase.
Okay.
Relocalizing Healthcare is his book.
Yep.
And the following month, I just finished reading How's Your Health, which is written by John Wasson, who's an internist up in Dartmouth, and Regina Benjamin, the former Surgeon General. And I really think the model that they've created is important for any primary care practice to be aware of, and for patients in general, so that they can have health in their lives. I'm going to reach out to them about being presenters for the following month. But Wayne, I'd be happy to introduce you to Dave Chase.
Yeah.
Dave came to our very first DPC summit. He volunteered to come as a speaker because he loves family medicine and primary care, and he loves direct primary care. And he did it without charging an honorarium, which was a big gift to us to help us get going. So Dave and I have stayed in touch over the years, and I think there could be a very fruitful conversation if you'd like to do that.
I'd love to do that. If you'd be willing to connect us, that'd be super. It's a good time to do it. Now that we're, really moving forward with this NAM study and looking at post, the NAM study is launched now. Now we're looking at, okay, how can we make it, something more than just a bookshelf dust collector.
So Wayne, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I think I know the answer, but I have to ask the question. When you talk about family medicine, not being all things to all people. What exactly do you mean by that? And is responding to acute care? Now, I think you have that in your core
Yeah.
of standard, and I personally think family physicians and general internists' willingness to respond to acute care problems is the window in that brings a lot of people into, particularly younger people, into connection with something larger that could be offered. But I'm just wondering your comment about not being all things to all people.
Well, the model in the JFP is an attempt to really do advanced primary care, and it includes acute care management, absolutely,
Right.
in those areas, and care coordination, which is a key component of it. But I think as we've seen with and again, I'm not criticizing family physicians that do this. I understand it completely. I love it too. That to decide, well, I'm just going to be a sports doc, right? And I'm going to do knee injections and technology and that kind of stuff. Is that core family medicine? They're family practitioners, okay? Right. But is that what family medicine is about? And I think what we've lost is that we've lost our ability to take care of the whole person for chronic disease management. And I think that's what needs to be restored. It doesn't mean you neglect the others. You have to have a system to do that, to have comprehensive care. This is what Starfield model, says and describes and shows is important. It's an important part of the continuity issue. And so I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. I'm saying that it shouldn't be done to the exclusion of health restoration.
Right. Yes. Yes. And so I was when I was at Ohio State, I was the coordinator of John Lombardo's sports medicine fellowship. And so I got to be right in the middle of the whole sports medicine thing back in the 90s within family medicine. And what was interesting is the motivations of the people who were attracted to that. There were some who wanted to be, sports medicine for the elite athletes. They wanted to do like the Cleveland Cavs, and they wanted to do the universities to be and they just really wanted the sports. They still brought their family medicine holistic generalist approach to the care of the athlete, but
yes.
But you're right. It was not, primary care was not family medicine. And then there were others who really wanted to be family physicians first, but also to have that piece of the sports medicine. So within their respective communities, there were opportunities for them to do that. But it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was a side job, but they still had the true primary care going there. But it was interesting, the difference in the people.
The best primary care practice I ever had was in the military. Where I ran literally a hospital, small hospital in a remote community. I was the public health person. I did acute care. I did, sick care. I did child care, and I did preventative care. And it was great. I had the resources to do it. I had, a health coach. I had, nurse. I had X-ray tech, et cetera, et cetera. And, it was beautiful. I loved it. It was fantastic. And I knew the people in the community, and it was great. And you know why I could do that? So I didn't have to worry about the money.
Pair.
Right.
Because it was a single pair?
It was a single pair. I did not have to worry about the money. If I wanted to make a double appointment, triple appointment with somebody because I knew they were going to be complex, a problem issue, or I had to deal with a specialty, so what? Okay, the outcome was the key issue, not the method. And it was great. And anyway.
Well, Wayne, let's play on that a little bit, because that's really the question is, number one, a lot of doctors aren't really of the personality or the mindset, or the mindset, as you said, they're just not into it. I just want to fix broken people. I just want to, I want to be a surgeon basically, or I want to be an internist. I want to be a hepatologist. I want to be a subspecialist. I want to be an expert on some little piece of people. The kind of people you're talking about are a small percentage of primary care. And even in family medicine, Larry, you've seen lots of family docs go through the years. Not everyone is going to be,
Right.
a holistic physician. And they're just not going to do it. So
No, I
number
agree.
one, we can't think all family doctors are going to be advanced primary care practitioners. And, it's one thing to find the people and then to train them. But then as you had, how do you create the economic situation where they can actually flourish?
Yeah.
We've seen the big approach to try to do this through the patient-centered medical home and teams and integrate behavioral health and mental health. And there's been some success, but a lot of not very successful attempts. So if things work so well at your small hospital in your small community, and you got better outcomes and everybody was happier and you obviously were more fulfilled, it was probably more cost effective because of all of those things. Why is that so rare? You'd think that that would be the model that actually would take over because it solves so many of these problems. But
Because we have a market, not a healthcare system, just
That's
saying.
right.
exactly.
So can I just jump in and
Yeah.
just tell you guys something that I just left? Just because it really struck me. You may have heard me from time to time mention that there's a social incubator outside of Boston called Momentum, and that I keep saying that what I think we all ought to do is raise a bunch of money and give it to some of these young people and get them to build the social movement that's going to change to get at the problem Pat just mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, somehow I got invited to talk to the healthcare people at Momentum. I just left them. There were 7 or 8, all people in their late 20s, early 30s. They are not healthcare workers, with one exception. One has public health training. Another is in medical school at Hopkins. They want to fix this, and they are not about trying to preserve their professional integrity because they're not health professionals by and large.
Right.
They see healthcare as fundamental to American democracy, and see a healthcare system as important to making sure that democracy stays whole.
Sounds like they read your book, Michael.
Well, they
Yep.
may have done that too, but that it wasn't the book that got them. They got the book. If you follow me.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that they're out there, and I'm going to keep harping on the notion that I think one of the things our generation should be doing is going around and telling our colleagues that we need to tithe and get them enough money to sustain them for a couple of years, and then get out of their way.
People like that. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I agree.
We both need them, and I think we need to help finance them, because it takes some money to build a movement or to get a movement started, $500,000 to $1 million, I think. And there's plenty of money among our colleagues. If we all, I'm going to throw a big number, but if we all threw in $10,000, which all of us have made from this system, we could raise that money pretty soon.
Yeah.
So just for the back, I hate to use numbers and I hate to ask people for money. I'm no good at it. But I don't see a pathway to fundamentally changing this without that. The great work that Wayne's doing is really important. And we'll go forward reasonably, make good progress, but I think it's going to take a long time. And it doesn't exist in the social environment that's necessary to really give it legs.
Yeah.
So just,
I'll look them up. Momentum, they're called. Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Great.
this exists to train people how to build social movements.
Yeah, this sounds exactly like what Morse Singer would want, Andrew Morse Singer. I mean, it's the intersection of healthcare, especially primary care, and social movements, which is what they're interested in.
I think Andrew came through that, as that's what put together the movement for marriage equality.
Yeah.
So he knows about momentum.
Oh,
And
good.
the challenge is just to find the energy and the money they need to get going. And like I say, then get out of their way. I'm too old to do this.
Yeah.
They're
that's right.
charged up and ready to go. And I just thought I'd let you guys know that was out there.
Good. Well, I thank you for mentioning that, Michael. And I'm just finishing up my reading The Prophets. I don't know if you've seen that or not. A beautifully written book. It's about it's a lyrical book about a slave family in the 1820s
It's
in
called, it's
in the
called
South.
The
The
Prophet,
Prophets. The Prophets. It's fiction,
right?
and but it is just gorgeously written. I mean, guy, I think his name is Robert Jones or something as the author. But anyway, it's beautiful. Yeah,
Oh, he's great.
yeah,
This must be, I know this book,
Yeah.
but I know it by a different name, I think. It's about somebody who was, they were freedmen, and they had their own slaves. They were black people, but is that the same book?
No. This is not. This is about a slave, collective slave family living in the South in the 1820s, and it's about their inner life largely. It's about their inner life and their social dynamic, and just really both demonstrating the sophistication of it, and it's just the way it's written is it's like poetry.
If it occurs to you to snap me a picture of the cover and send it, I'd love to see it.
I'm doing it right now. Yeah,
Right.
it's really great.
Yeah,
Great.
send it to me as well.
Yep.
And
yeah,
Pat, I'm going to finish with a comment, and then it's time for us to close up. I've talked to enough people like David Moen and others who have been creating, and Chen Med, by the way. There are plenty of family docs out there yearning for this.
Yeah.
And David has no problem coming into a city and recruiting people who will leave what they're doing and go join. They've got the restricted covenant issue, but they are very happy. I think the payment system and the bureaucracy of the hamster wheel has really just ground people up, and not everybody is comfortable with risk and jumping off the edge and jumping into something wholly new. But I think that if we were able to create a payment system for example, with employers in a community where the employers was big enough to offer enough access to enough patients for a practice to do well, I think practices would be interested in changing. Independent practices. I'm not talking about the hospital owned because they're just too constrained by the hospital bureaucracy. But among the independent practices, I think there's a lot more growth opportunity out there than may appear on the surface. Just my opinion from talking to a lot of people.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. That's reassuring.
You would have been one of the people, right?
Yeah, sure. I spent my whole career looking for the situation Wayne had in the military. I didn't think that's what the military was like, and probably it's not that way lots of places.
Yeah, no, it's true. Sometimes you go to war.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
that was
that.
another big
Yeah.
impediment.
Oops. I slipped in between the window of that.
Yeah.
After the Vietnam War and before the the wars were still in.
Yeah.
Grew up. I slipped right in that window. So anyway, lucky, just lucky timing.
Well, back to your original question, Wayne. Number one, fantastic article. I think it's right on. I think it's, as I said in my email to you, it's concise, it's coherent, and it's comprehensive enough to give a total picture. I think our job is to figure out how do we get more people to read it and understand it. And I expect it's one of many articles you're going to be writing, as it evolves. So yeah, anyway, before you write your next one, if you want some feedback as to what to emphasize or how to shift it.
Thank you. Well, I'll send drafts to you all first. Like I said at the beginning, this was inspired from all the conversations that I've had in this group. This is absolutely couldn't have done it without all the conversations, input, discussions that we've had over the last year or so. So absolutely.
Thanks for recommending.
I think a
Yeah.
year ago, we were hoping that we would come up with some kind of a written summary of what we were thinking, and this is perfect. So thank you for doing the work for us.
Well, it's too short. It needs to be fleshed out now, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, needs to be implemented. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to bring things to close.
All
This
right.
podcast, this webinar will be available. It'll take a couple days to render it. I'll share it with everybody. And this is part of what I think we can do, Wayne, and I'm glad you took the approach of the presentation that you prepared. I think that was very helpful. There will be a lot of people, I think, who will be very interested in this, and we will promote this very broadly. So good night to all, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Take care. Have a
Good
good
to see
evening.
you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.